We have celebrated and we are back at it now with the Bill Sang podcast. We're going to be talking about today abortion, abolitionism. We're going to be talking about the percentage of DNA that humans have in common with chimps. And we're going to talk about is there going to be a mass extinction coming or the redemption of all things. Stay tuned for the Bill Sang podcast. Where to start? There's so many things to cover, and I feel like I've been taking way too much time away from recording an episode of the Bill Sang podcast, but we got a big episode up for you today. We are looking at abortion, abolitionism. I can't remember the other side of it. There's abolitionism, and then there is, I can't remember what it's called, but there's another side of it. I was listening to commentary on it, not commentary, but an interview with Gina Cross on the Lisa Childers podcast, and it was an interesting conversation. It reminds me of different things that I've been listening to lately as well. Also talking about this supposed 98% relationship between chimpanzees and humans. And you know what? I guess while we're at it, it just came to mind. Let's talk about the dire wolves as well, the cloning of dire wolves. Then also, I've seen this floating around for quite some time, and even though it's not particularly new, it's people are going to make it sound new to you. They make it sound like a surprise to them, this mass extinction event that's going to come. And on top of that, to juxtapose that against the redemption of all things through Jesus Christ. So let's get to it. So the first thing I guess I want to talk about today, let's get to this idea that chimpanzees in their DNA are 98% related to humans. Now, in the past, I've seen people claim that it's 98, 99%, maybe even a little bit higher than 99.0%. Not 100% the same, but a lot closer than what a creationist would feel comfortable with. Myself being a creationist, that is. So to say that, wow, 99% similarity, 98% similarity, that's not very much of a difference between chimpanzees and humans. But when I saw this poster recently, because apparently there's been some new research done that has affirmed, not confirmed, but affirmed the idea that we have more than 98% similarities with chimpanzees, I become suspect of that because years back, there was an Answers in Genesis article, and I looked it up. I can't remember exactly what the name is, but if you type in the search bar in Answers in Genesis, chimpanzee and human DNA, and maybe throw in the word similarity, you can find the article. And the article I pulled up happened to be by not by Dr. Bergman and Dr. Tompkins, but at least cited their work. And this is very fascinating because inside of this article, and mind you, Answers in Genesis used to write really long articles, and so I never really finished them, and sometimes it's frustrating for me to read them. And so I didn't read the whole thing of this article. I kind of skimmed through it, tried to get some bullet points out of it. Lately, they're a lot better with their articles. But what they did is, first of all, they established where is it that they are getting this 98 to 99% number from. Well, first of all, they're only looking at a fraction of the DNA. Whoa, okay, they're not looking at the entire DNA structure, but or the genome or whatever, but they're only looking at a fraction of it. Now, I get it. When you take a sample of anything the size of, say, DNA, 98 to 99% to see that much similarity in even just a portion of it is staggering, is amazing. However, what Dr. Bergman and Dr. Tompkins have done is that they have looked at factors, they have looked at portions of DNA that the mainstream scientific community has not done, or the people have done the research to say that there's 98, 99% similarity. They've looked further into the DNA, looked at some of these other areas where conventional scientists do not look, and they found that the DNA similarities are more like 81%. Well, that's quite a bit different right there. In fact, some would argue we have more in common with the banana DNA-wise. than a chimpanzee if we're saying 81%. But again, that's only looking at certain things. And I don't recall where all this is, but I know that to a degree, what we used to call junk DNA plays into this. That used to be that we said there's such thing inside of our DNA called junk DNA that scientists supposed, evolutionary scientists supposed, had no function but was a vestige of the past. Useless DNA from our more primate-like ancestors. And mind you, they call us primates as well. I get it, whatever. But our more ape-like ancestors from the past, and that this DNA is a vestige of that. Well, I used to know the details. I don't anymore. But this junk DNA, so-called, is not junk. It just, I believe what it is that the DNA that they're looking at primarily as being the usable DNA is known as coding DNA, that it codes. But then what they call junk DNA is non-coding DNA. Now, what all that entails, I don't know. I mean, I don't study this stuff for a living. But they found that within this non-coding DNA, that there is a lot of difference. And that non-coding DNA is not non-functional. It does perform functions. But think about it in terms of this. There was a day and age when they used to tell parents that their children should have their tonsils removed. Why? Well, because they said that tonsils don't perform a function anymore, so you might as well have them removed. There are people that had their appendixes wantonly removed for the sake that we were told that, hey, you know what? Your appendix does not serve a function. It is a vestige of the past, of our evolutionary past. And so people wantonly had their appendixes removed as well. And there is other examples of this as well. For instance, take wisdom teeth. People, if your wisdom teeth are coming in, I'm telling you, don't jump to have them removed. Why? Okay, this is a personal story of mine. We are told that our wisdom teeth are a vestige of the past, right? That we don't need them anymore. That was for some other time in our evolutionary history, right? Well, I was told early on that I needed to, as soon as my wisdom teeth came in, that I needed to have them removed, right? Years and years later, because I had a rough, I don't want to make anybody sound bad, but I had a rough experience with that dentist where I went through a lot of pain in a particular visit. And even though they told me I needed to have my wisdom teeth removed, I really didn't want to go in to have them removed at the time because of that experience. I was kind of scared to go back to that dentist. Well, years later, I went back to this particular dentist, and they looked at my wisdom teeth again, and they said, you know what? You don't have to have them removed. And I thought, hot dog. If they would have told me that at the get-go, then I wouldn't even have bothered to come back at this point. Well, that's kind of the point right there. They want you to come back. But I don't blame the dentist. They probably truly believed that when my wisdom teeth were coming in that they needed to be removed. Because they were taught in their schooling that wisdom teeth are a vestige of the past. They are useless. They don't belong in your mouth anymore. And yet mine grew in, and they thought that I had to have them removed. Later on to find out, you know what? They aren't that big of a problem, are they? So you don't have to have them removed anymore. Okay, now you see what I'm talking about. So when we're talking about coding versus non-coding DNA, I understand the principle behind what Dr. Bergman and Dr. Tompkins were talking about, because evolutionary scientists like to make these claims that this is a vestige of the past and that's a vestige of the past. And you even use that to prove their claims that we have evolutionary ancestry. But we don't. And you know what? Your appendix does work. And your tonsils do work. You're better off with them. You can live without them, but you're better off if you have them inside of your body. And it's better not to undergo surgery if it is not necessary. So this 98 to 99% number, I know they keep on doing research on it, but again, it's starting from a false premise that we are 98% similar to chimpanzees. We are not. I would agree with Dr. Bergman and Dr. Tompkins' 81% number, because again, it considers more than just this little portion of DNA that mainstream science happens to be looking at. And by the way, this is the same reason they use for global warming too. If we take, what I'm talking about with global warming is when they say that like 99% of scientists agree with global warming. First of all, that's an old study, okay? And with man-made global warming, that is. That's an old study, first of all. And the way they got to that number is first they went to an organization and they did a survey. They said, okay, what percentage of you believe in global warming, man-made global warming? And so they got a decent percentage of these scientists to say, okay, yeah, we believe in global warming. But the problem is that wasn't good enough because a good chunk of them deny global warming. So what they started doing is they started breaking it down into smaller groups, okay? So I can't remember exactly how, but it was something along the lines of, first they broke it down to, okay, who are the climate scientists? Okay, so you had a smaller percentage more of climate scientists believe in man-made global warming. Okay, now we need to separate them out more. So now we need to determine, okay, which one of you think that the global warming could be catastrophic in the future? Okay, so they break it down into those groups. Okay, now of you that believe that it's catastrophic, how many of you believe that? And mind you, this is just an example. How many of you believe that it is caused by human beings? And of course, at that point, it's a much larger percentage of them believe it's caused by human beings. Believe that, and so that's kind of, that's kind of what scientists do that are promoting an agenda. I read a book not too long ago. My son got to read it as well. It's called Monster by Frank Peretti, and it shows in what looks like an exaggerated way that scientists will sometimes try to fudge their data in order to prove a point, but it does an excellent job at it, and I highly promote the book Monster by Frank Peretti. And it's an older book. It's like from early 2000s, I believe, but I highly recommend you read the book Monster by Frank Peretti. And this gets into this idea of this mass extinction event, by the way. I keep on seeing this come up, and it drives me crazy like you would not believe. Over and over. I mean, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I believe it was right after Donald Trump got elected into office in 2016, said that we have 12 years left on planet Earth. Giving this impression to younger people that for us, the world's going to end. The world is going to be in such a bad place that we're going to go extinct because humanity won't be able to exist anymore in a climate that has been decimated by global warming, that is overpolluted and so forth. Well, we are in 2025, and this global warming, mass extinction, environmental catastrophe hasn't happened yet. It doesn't look like it's anywhere close to happening. The polar ice caps are still there. We are nowhere near dead right now. Science has very much become a religion inside of itself, and it's to the degree that science is, in many respects, an anti-human religion. Look at the abortion industry, and yes, it is an industry. It is not health care. It is an industry seeking to make a profit and seeking to push an agenda. We see that Margaret Sanger, her prime objective was to eliminate the black race from our society, to remove them entirely, and that's why they strategically placed abortion clinics inside of predominantly black communities. Now, we've created a narrative now that for some reason we're saying that having babies is a hindrance to progress. So I want to talk a little bit about this in relation to, I think I remember, is abolitionism versus incrementalism. That's what it's called, incrementalism, okay? The narrative that's been pushed, and I saw this great lady on Facebook recently. I don't know who she was, but there was this clip on Facebook of this woman who is going down where our culture has taken us, saying that feminism has been teaching that being a wife and a mother is slavery. Now, the irony behind that is because if you are not a wife and a mother, then you're enslaving yourself then to a boss. Which, by the way, men don't like doing that. Men don't like having bosses. Men like being independent and being able to work for themselves. And yet we are promoting that, hey, you need to become a worker. At the very least, own your own business. And then you're now you are, as a woman, being enslaved to the work that you have as a boss. And yet we glorify this idea of being a boss babe is what we call it. Whatever. I don't really care too much, but that is a movement inside of our culture. And what this woman was promoting was that we need to get back to what the Bible teaches us, that women, older women, should be teaching younger women how to love their husbands and their children and how to raise their children. And she was teaching also that that's something that isn't as natural as we would like to think. And that's because of how we've been tainted by sin. And also because we're tainted by sin, we tend to treat our dogs like babies these days. And we should not be doing that. That dogs are not humans. And so because dogs are not humans, we should, it's cool to love your dog. I've loved my dogs growing up and everything, but dogs are not humans, and we should not be valuing their lives above human life, above baby life. And so what is abortion abolitionism versus abortion incrementalism? Abortion abolitionism is the idea that if we try to promote laws that are aimed at curbing abortion, that it should not be an incremental change. Like, for instance, the heartbeat bill was an incrementalist approach, was to reduce the number of abortions happening in our society significantly, right? Well, the abolition movement would say that that's not good enough. And namely not because they're against the idea of reducing the number of abortions in favor of eliminating all abortions, but because if we incrementally decrease the number of abortions, we're not going to decrease the number of abortions through law. That they say that, well, look at what happened after the heartbeat bill is signed into law. Now abortion pills are being taken like candy practically, that there's more abortions than ever happening from a chemical standpoint. People taking these abortion pills, which, by the way, are very harmful to young women. And I get their point. It makes a lot of sense. I consider myself to be more of an incrementalist myself because I've seen sort of the way that politics works, because that's the area where we are dealing in here. We are dealing in politics. Now, can God do a great work where all of a sudden legislation is passed that eliminates abortion altogether? Yes, he could. I don't know if that's what he's choosing to do or if he is allowing us to struggle and to battle it and to make these small steps. I don't know. To me, I'm of the frame of mind of if we can, one, eliminate the majority of abortions by passing legislation like a heartbeat bill, and then educating people on why abortion is wrong. I saw a post not horribly long ago that said, men, if you aren't ready to be a father and a husband, don't have sex. Women, if you aren't ready to be a mother and a wife, don't have sex. Because what is the point of this post? We call the opposition to abortion abolitionism or abortion incrementalism, which we call pro-life, by the way, both of those, we call them pro-life, that the opposition to that call themselves pro-choice, saying that, what, you're going to rob women of their right to choose whether or not to have a child? And the answer is no. The answer is you have choices prior to becoming pregnant about whether you want to become pregnant or not. You don't have to get into bed with a person. And we've propagated this myth that your life will not be fulfilling unless you do that. And unless you do that frequently with as many partners as possible. And we need to end that sort of thinking altogether. And that's why I'm more of an incrementalist. I think we need to make a small step forward by doing like a heartbeat bill. And by the way, I think that we should make steps to make the abortion pill illegal. Why? Because it's harmful to young women, and it can even prevent young women from having babies in the future if they choose to do so. So the pro-choice movement is in many respects robbing women of their choice later on down the line, and there have been many women that can no longer have children as a result of having so many abortions. So it's important for us to be educated on these matters, that it's not really a matter of being pro-life is robbing women of a right to choose. No, rather, we are trying to restore things back to nature the way that God designed it. And that's what kills me. How many species in the world abort their babies, abort their offspring before they're born? Now, again, that doesn't take into account that, yes, some animals will eat their young as well. I don't think that anybody admires that. I don't think anybody admires it when the mother bear eats her cubs, or when the father bear eats their cubs, or when a mantis eats its offspring. Nobody, as far as I'm aware, unless you're sick, nobody admires that. Nobody says, hey, that is that species' right to choose whether or not it wants to have children. But there is a special exception that's made for human babies, partly because they are fully dependent on their mother for survival. And their parents in general, not just their mother, but their parents in general, which, by the way, men, if you get a woman pregnant outside of wedlock, marry her and raise that child. And you need to be prepared prior to that commitment. Now, I'm not even talking about marriage. I'm talking about before. The conceiving of a child, which, by the way, that should not come until after marriage. But you need to be prepared before you take action that could conceive a child, that you very well may conceive a child. And you have to know who it is you are potentially conceiving a child with. This is an important thing. This is part of life. You see it all over the world, across different species. This is not something that we don't know how it happens, or that men force it upon women and rob them of the choice. 99% of the time, over 99% of the time, that it is a consensual choice, and that abortions happen because it's inconvenient. Well, what about that less than 1% where it's threatening to their life, or that it is as a result of rape or incest? Well, abortion is never necessary. Many OBGYNs will tell you that abortion is never necessary. Many former abortion doctors will tell you that abortion is never necessary. There are options outside of abortion that can at least give the unborn child a chance at life. And I think it's important for people to know that. And that's the type of education I'm talking about, that we need to be able to buy time to educate people to know why abortion is wrong, which, by the way, the reason why it's wrong, all people are created in the image of God. And God knew you before you were born. And if God knows you before you're born, why would you want to exterminate somebody else's life in the womb that God knew of before they were even conceived? Oh, and I said born, before you were even conceived. God knew you before you were conceived even. I mean, it's amazing. We talk about when does life begin, but God knows you before you were even conceived. And we're created in the image of God, and to kill somebody that is created in the image of God premeditatively is murder. I could go down this rabbit hole further and further and further. Abortion is wrong. And God can forgive you, and He will forgive you if you've had an abortion. But we need to learn that abortion is wrong. You should not have an abortion. That the gospel itself is inherently pro-life. So Christians out there, stop supporting this evil, satanic industry that we call abortion. It is a satanic industry. It is child sacrifice. It is offering up your children to idols, because what's the idol? The idol of success, the idol of a better life, the idol of my best life now. And the only way I can do that is if I am not weighed down by the burden of children, which, by the way, God in His word says that children are a blessing from Him. Okay, well, that should really reorient us in respect to how we think about children, in respect to how we think about babies and the unborn and those who have been conceived. And so we shouldn't even stop them through the abortion pill. That is still murder. It's still dangerous to the women, but above all things, that it's an affront to God, that it is an attack against God's natural order, and we should not do that. So we talk about this mass extinction event, right? They were working on our I saw this post that there have been 5 mass extinction events throughout world history, and we're working on the 6th. The irony of that is that the people who are saying this don't even know what they're talking about. They think that we're doing it through global warming. They think we're doing it through overpopulation. But you look at what they're doing. For one, they're aborting the population. Stop aborting the population. They're promoting policies that will reduce the number of people that are being born. Okay, what are you doing? You're talking about mass extinction. You're killing people. That leads to mass extinction. And on top of that, something that PETA won't tell you is that they conduct more euthanasias than any other organization in America, probably across the world. PETA is responsible for the euthanasia of for the putting down of more pets, more animals than any other organization across the globe. And that is because they believe that life creates climate change and is detrimental to the climate, and that's why they do that. So people that promote this idea that we're so-called working on the 6th mass extinction event, first of all, they're the ones who are promoting agendas like abortion, like the LGBTQ plus agenda, which reduces population size, by the way. And then on top of that, this whole idea of geoforming. I know that there's been this claim that it is a conspiracy theory. It is in no ways a conspiracy theory. It is for real. People really are practicing geoforming for the sake of trying to manipulate our climate. Now, wait a second here. Why are they doing that? Well, because they're fearful that through climate change, we're going to go extinct. And so their remedy for that, well, let's change the climate through geoforming. Oh my goodness, are you kidding me? Let's put harmful chemicals into the air to change the environment because we're polluting the air so much through man-made means, and the pollutants we're putting in the air through man-made means are now changing the climate of the world that's going to lead to a mass extinction event. So in combat of that, let's put harmful chemicals into the air through man-made means and change the climate through man-made means. You're bringing about the mass extinction yourselves, people. How do you not understand this? I mean, you could not write a more satirical script. So, having said all this, what does that bring us to? The redemption of all things. Abortion, evolution, this belief in a man-made mass extinction event. The redemption of all things in Jesus Christ, our Lord's second coming. That ultimately we have nothing to fear. I think that we need to look at things through a rational eye and a sound mind, because ultimately world history is not going to conclude until God brings it to a conclusion through his Son, Jesus Christ. So we should not fear these movements in the world. We should not fear climate change. I mean, if it is something where it's legitimate that mankind is changing the climate like we are trying to intentionally do, as I was just saying with geoforming, that we should not fear those things. If it's legitimate, yes, it's okay for us to combat those things. And I think that we should stop people from hurting other people, from killing other people, from killing those who have not been born, from killing those that we think are excess population, from looking at people as being nothing more than evolved chimp-like creatures. We are not. We are created in the image of God, and we are told that nature is groaning, waiting for the sons of God to, and daughters, by the way, of God to be revealed, and for the culmination of all things through Jesus Christ's second coming, that he's going to take this world and make it better. He's going to take this world and make it good again. There's a saying for you: make planet Earth great again, or make planet Earth good again. And the only one that can do that is Jesus Christ. Not Donald Trump, Jesus Christ. So I think that's a pretty good note to end on right there, that Jesus will return one day. And what we need to do until then, live according to his word. Live according to his commands. Live according to the ways of God. And love your neighbor as yourself. And love God above all things. I'd like to thank you for joining me for today's Bill Saying podcast. The song you're listening to right now as we're wrapping up is by Daniel Pennell. It is called You Are the Light. You can go to his website. I'll try to post a link, if I remember to, down below so that you can visit his website, listen to more of his music. He's done some great things, and he's been very gracious to let me use this song. But as You Are the Light, and that's by Daniel Pennell. I'd like to thank you for joining me for today's episode of the Bill Saying podcast. Be blessed.
Worship your name, Alpha and Omega, forever the same. All glory and all honor, to you we sing and pray. Our Lord, our God, the truth, the life, the way. Worship your name, Alpha and Omega, forever the same.